Up to $800,000 gone. An 8 on Your Side investigation uncovered that HARC, a longtime champion for the support and treatment of the developmentally disabled, took that money from its clients without their knowledge or permission. The state attorney general investigated and closed the case. But now senior investigative reporter Steve Andrews says others want a more thorough investigation.
Bill Chambliss was one of about 50 clients at the Hillsborough Association of Retarded Citizens, or HARC, whose money was taken from a trust fund set up for their care. That money, mostly from Social Security, was put aside for things like dental treatments, trips to the movies, an occasional meal at a restaurant. Bill's brother-in-law is HARC Foundation Chair Steve Brannick.
It was done without their permission and knowledge, including without our knowledge for our brother-in-law Bill. So to our mind on the board, that makes it wrong.
So wrong, Florida's Attorney General launched an investigation in 2011. HARC's board discovered that CEO Richard Lilliston allowed the agency to take up to $800,000 from the client's trust fund. Money belonging to Bill and other clients plugged holes in HARC's budget. Instead of paying for a meal at McDonald's, it helped pay for things like salaries and perks for Lilliston and CFO Frank Pannulo. Perks that included what Brannick says was an unauthorized $1,800 a month car allowance for each and cell phones for Lilliston's family. HARC terminated both Pannulo and Lilliston.
They didn't care about funds.
Months later, at a July 2012 meeting, HARC board members, feeling the pressure of the AG investigation and imminent financial collapse, lashed out at Lilliston and Pannulo.
They sat there and asked for raises and bonuses, and when we didn't give them what they asked for, they took it anyway. They took the car allowance.
Jerking us around and giving everybody cell phones, and this is outrageous.
What's even more outrageous, this all happened right under the nose of HARC's board of directors. Pannulo initially told us he didn't remember how the client's money was used. Do you know if it was spent on operations?
It was probably borrowed for operations. It should show in the foundation books.
Okay. Do you know if anybody gave permission to move the money out of that client's account into HARC's for operations?
CEO had to have.
CEO Lilliston, a media darling while at HARC, he enticed local TV personalities, including several from News Channel 8, to participate in charity fashion shows, bowling events, and golf tournaments to raise money for HARC.
I want to thank all of our supporters again.
Never shy about discussing the agency on camera back then, Lilliston refuses comment now. He wouldn't come to his door to answer questions about why he used clients' money without their permission. But as we left, he peeked out from behind a tree.
It's actually taking money from the very people that we advocate for.
Deborah Linton is the executive director of the HARC of Florida, a statewide organization whose mission is to improve the quality of life for people like Bill.
I've never seen an organization overall take this amount of resident funds and use it for themselves. It's pretty shocking, and we were very disturbed by it.
The Attorney General found no criminal wrongdoing. It closed the case and referred it to the Department of Financial Services. When asked, the AG's office said the wording of the trust allowed HARC to spend the client's money.
I don't see that that's allowed at all, and I would sure hope that the Attorney General would take a second look at this.
Elder law attorney Charlie Robinson reviewed the trust for 8 on Your Side. He says the wording is clear. The trust was set up for clients' supplemental needs and care. What HARC management did was wrong.
I think there are huge legal questions that are raised that law enforcement, whether it's the Attorney General or somebody, should really take a much closer look at.
As for clients like Bill who lost their money, they won't be getting it back anytime soon. In Tampa, Steve Andrews, News Channel 8.
Deborah Linton says if HARC is allowed to get away with taking clients' money, it sets a dangerous precedent statewide. The Attorney General's office says it is confident in the way it's handled the HARC investigation and its referral to the Department of Financial Services. Robert Franklin signed a contract entrusting thousands of his dollars to the Hillsborough Association for Retarded Citizens, or HARC. For decades, HARC cared for developmentally disabled people in the Bay Area. So why is Robert's family now so furious? Are there problems? Senior investigative reporter Steve Andrews tells us, you bet there are.
Ralph Franklin buried his younger brother Robert in 2011.
Everybody that knew him loved him.
Robert, an individual with Down syndrome, died at 46.
He always had a smile on his face. Him and I were always roughhousing and tussling together, trying to take his plate from him and those kind of things that brothers do.
Robert lived in group homes at the Hillsborough Association for Retarded Citizens, or HARC.
The caregivers at the group homes that he was in were absolutely phenomenal. They took great care of him.
Ralph says his parents were very involved with Robert's care. At one time, they both served as HARC board members. Now, his family feels betrayed.
I find it absolutely deplorable.
Ralph was disappointed by an April 8 on Your Side report that profiled Vicki Caldwell and how HARC spent her money. Money set aside for her care and needs and supposedly placed in a trust. He was floored to discover from that same story that his brother signed a contract placing his Social Security benefits into that same so-called trust.
They knew that he didn't have the mental capability to enter into this kind of legal agreement.
Ralph and his parents were Robert's legal guardians.
We had no knowledge that this agreement existed.
Robert couldn't read.
There's absolutely no way he would have understood the implications of this trust.
The contract is signed by former CEO Richard Lilliston, notarized by former Chief Financial Officer Frank Panullo.
And there's absolutely no way my parents or I would have authorized this to be signed.
Our investigation has learned that the HARC employees who signed as witnesses to the 2007 execution of this agreement actually didn't start working for HARC until 2009.
This document is very problematic.
We showed the contract to attorney Peter Hobson.
You can't, under Florida law, ask somebody who doesn't have the competency to understand the document to execute the document. It's 101 of contract law.
But HARC did. The money that was intended for dental, medical, and entertainment needs was not placed in a trust. Instead, HARC stuck the benefits of more than 40 clients into a money market account and used the cash as it pleased without the client's knowledge or permission.
And it is a crime in Florida to temporarily or permanently deprive someone of their property without their consent.
State investigators think HARC took as much as $700,000, $49,000 from Vicki Caldwell, $7,100 from Robert.
And money was stolen from them, in my opinion, without their knowledge.
Much of the money HARC grabbed from clients was from Social Security. According to Hobson, that's something the feds need to investigate.
It is criminal fraud under the Social Security law if you receive payment from Social Security for the benefit of an individual and then appropriate that money to anything other than the benefit of that individual.
Money meant for clients' care and needs paid for operating expenses, including unauthorized $1,800 a month car allowances for Lilliston and Panullo. Do you know if any of that money may have paid for your car allowance?
If it went into operations.
It also paid for cell phones for Lilliston's family members.
Clearly, that evidence is something beyond the operating costs. That evidence is personal gain and greed.
Another potential problem, Panullo notarized Robert Franklin's contract.
That a notary public may not authorize a signature on a document if it appears that the person is mentally incapable of understanding the nature and effect of the document at the time of notarization.
Federal and state investigations of HARC are underway.
To ask a person with Down syndrome to sign a document that an attorney would have to read carefully to explain to normal adults is reprehensible.
Prosecutors have yet to make a move.
Somebody in government needs to stand up for these kind of children that cannot protect themselves.
Ralph Franklin wrote letters to the Hillsborough County Sheriff, the state attorney, Attorney General Pam Bondi, as well as the U.S. Attorney here in Florida, and told them the taking of money from Robert's account constitutes fraud, theft, and exploitation. He is asking that law enforcement conduct a thorough investigation of former CEO Lilliston and former CFO Panullo.
Our 8 on Your Side investigation was the first to tell you about the Hillsborough Association for Retarded Citizens claiming it provided services to people who were already dead. Money taken from people who need specialized care the most. Tonight, we can tell you the state now has some of that money back. Senior investigative reporter Steve Andrews broke this story about HARC's brazen billings in January. He joins us tonight with this newest development. Steve?
It's a big one, Gail. Late today, Florida's chief financial officer announced that $310,000 of money HARC misused was returned to the state. CFO Jeff Atwater told me this was not a mistake or misjudgment on HARC's part. In fact, he called it a repeated effort by HARC management to misrepresent and overbill the state.
It was fraud from top to bottom.
Florida's chief financial officer says former administrators at HARC fraudulently billed the state for hundreds of thousands of dollars in the HomeLink program. In HomeLink, HARC clients provide services like yard work or house cleaning to homebound seniors. In January, an 8 on Your Side investigation revealed that HARC was collapsing financially. We also disclosed HARC's attorney, Cynthia Mikos, informed board members last summer of the state's investigation into claims that HARC billed Florida's Agency for Persons with Disabilities for providing services to people who are already dead or didn't even exist.
We build services on deceased people, and we said about how they love their yard work.
HARC Foundation Chair Stephen Brannick.
That's a shocking allegation. And if that happened and it happened improperly, we would be just as angry about it as the state.
The state says it happened. Atwater called the billings intentional, fraud, despicable.
I think this is off the scale, and I hope it sends a message to anyone else in the state of Florida that if you engage in such behavior, that will take the fine dollars of your neighbors and steal them, frankly, from getting to the place where the most vulnerable could use it. We're going to find you, and we're going to hold you accountable, and you'll pay a price.
In 2011, a former HARC employee claimed former CFO Frank Panullo pressured her to create false documents for the HomeLink program using names from Meals on Wheels. What do you know about billing for dead people in the HomeLink program?
Nothing.
Did you sign those invoices?
Yes. You got to understand, I was not involved at all in the programmatic part of that program.
Panullo was fired by former CEO Richard Lilliston. When the board discovered in 2011 that Lilliston and Panullo collected unauthorized $1,800 a month car allowances, it fired Lilliston. Lilliston has refused to comment on anything related to HARC. Atwater has plenty to say.
They were pulling money down from the state that could have gone to others in need, and it was not an accident. This was intentional. They had all the documentation. They knew what they were doing. They thought they'd get away with it.
Now, for taking money from the most vulnerable in our society, Atwater says on the despicable scale of 1 to 10, this is a 100. Last summer, the Department of Financial Services was looking at hitting HARC with $2 million in fines, penalties, and restitution. The $300 grand wraps up the civil side of this case.
Well, Steve, you've been telling us for a long time that HARC had no money, so I guess my first question is, where is the settlement money coming from, and will there be any criminal charges?
Well, as far as the money, the state sat down with the company that was insuring HARC's board of directors and officers and pounded out a settlement with them. Now, CFO Atwater wouldn't comment on a possible criminal investigation, but he did use the words fraud, intentional, and steal. My sources tell me another shoe should be dropping on HARC very soon.
Those are big words. All right. Thank you, Steve.